Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Jodi Dancers Talks. Today we have Kev from the Lions Boxing Club and Black Country Blokes with us. Hi Kev.
Hiya.
How you doing? Thank you ever so much for having me on.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, we came across your page and a few people recommended your page as well to us actually, which is quite promising in terms of the work you're trying to do, because clearly you're already in the process of raising awareness. But I just want to start with your journey, Kev, first. How is it that you felt passionate about raising awareness for mental health?
Well, I'm the head coach for a boxing club called the Lions ABC in Barney. I've been involved in amateur boxing all of my life. My dad's a GB boxing coach. He's getting ready for the Olympics now. He's got some massive names from Amir Khan to Anthony Joshua, Nicola Adams, and all these people.
Wow.
So I've been brought up in a boxing family. And unfortunately, when I was 3 years old, I had viral meningitis. And what it did, it attacked the optic nerve. So if you can imagine the wire in between the eye and the brain, it ate away the plastic around it. So the message comes in through the eye and leads through the holes. So I'm completely blind in my left eye and have under 10% vision in my right. And that it was tough growing up at school. And it wasn't necessarily kids. I mean, kids can be cruel, but kids are kids. It was the supporting teachers, because I went to a mainstream school with support teachers. And what they often did, they pointed out I was different. And the problem is, when you're a kid, all you want to be is normal. You want until I was a man, you know, I wanted to be extraordinary and be better than everyone. But at that time, all the Kev wanted to do was go unnoticed.
Yeah.
And then they treated us, instead of Alan, read this, Kevin, get your support teacher to read it to you, then you say back, can't you just miss me out? but that was how it was back in the 80s and the 90s. And I'd like to think it's better now. It's better, but it's not great. And I remember I had to get a taxi to school. And I remember being with these kids, and they were children, and they were already give up. And I remember looking, I'm thinking, that'll never be me. So then I started being like, if anyone was getting picked on, I was straight in there, sticking up for everyone. And it was tough. And when I was 11 years old, my dad, he finally broke it to me that I couldn't compete. And all my life, thinking, I'll get around this, because everything in life you can get around in one way or another.
Yeah.
But when I failed my medical and I couldn't do it, I went off the rails. It's getting to no good, proving that I could still fight. And I was doing what I thought I had to do to be a man.
Yeah.
And all it causes is problems, and that led to depression and anxiety. But then when I was 18, I went to college. I got through school by hook or by crook, and I left there. And then I wanted to go into being a journalist or something like that. And I remember what they called when they come into school and tell you what you're going to do, a careers officer.
Yeah.
And I went, I want to be a journalist. And I went, how ridiculous. You with your eyes, you'll never achieve this. And I went, oh, well. So then I went to do media studies at Stourbridge College. Did that. I got on a little radio station. I got kicked off for being too rude. And then I thought, this isn't for me. And my dad said, he goes, well, Kev, why don't you come up to the gym and start coaching? I said, Dad, but I've never been able to compete. I went, but who knows more about boxing than you? So I started off with a baby class, and then before you know it, I've been coaching there for 19 years.
Wow.
And now I'm the head coach there, and I've got lads who are boxing for England, and they've won English titles, and then some of them gone pro and doing well in the pro game. So all I'm trying to say is, we fixate on something. I'm going to be a boxer, but when that dream's taken away from you, you can still be involved in boxing, and I've become a coach. It's like, I want to be a singer. Do you want to be a singer singing down your local pub? Does that make you happy? Or do you want to be a platinum artist all around the world? Because one might not be achievable, but if it makes you happy to go and sing down your local pub or event, isn't that the important thing?
Yeah.
And it took me years to get that into my head, because I always felt like I wasn't living my dream, and I always thought like, maybe one day. Yeah, I'm a little fat kid. And them days are gone, but I love the coaching. And then by me having my journey, and like me now at 37 talking as open as I am, I would never have dreamt of doing this in my 20s. or something. It was the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
People were aware they had bad eyes, but maybe thought I wasn't wearing my contact lenses because I'm high functioning. I do most things at a great difficulty, but by any means necessary, I'll get there. And then by doing this, and then I'd open up and talk to people, either at the gym or they're in the pub or out on the street or whatever. And people go, no way. I never knew. And then I started talking about panic attacks and some days getting off the settee and not brushing your teeth and washing. They go, oh, me, that gave you. And I went, don't tell anyone, but I have a cry sometimes. But because I'd opened the door, they were willing to walk through it.
Yeah.
And then I went to see a counsellor 2 years ago about loads of different stuff. Because I believe in therapy, be it hypnotherapy, NLP, counselling. You've got to find the thing that works for you. And I've worked with some brilliant people who really helped me. And I remember going to this guy and he goes, find some hobbies. I'm at the gym full time. I'm a dad, I'm a husband. And he goes, well, have you tried doing Pilates or yoga? I went, believe me, Bert, I have not got that figure. So I was trying to give obstacles instead of solutions.
Yeah.
Then I was invited onto a radio station in London, and they invited me down. I come all the way from the Black Country down to London, and it was all about them. They'd asked me to come down there to talk about themselves. So like most of my education, I learned the wrong way of doing it. Because you have two things. You have the person who you copy and the person who you do the opposite of. And that's got me for a lot of life, that has. I've been great to have some brilliant mentors, but I've seen people do stuff so badly. And that's made me think, I'll never do that. And then Aaron Jew, who's one of the co-hosts on our show, he's got his own thing called Find Your Voice, which, by the way, is a brilliant podcast. And I was the first ever guest on there. And when I was first being so intimate, I wasn't just telling you two in the living room or wherever we were. I was telling everyone, I thought, oh my God, all them people from my past are going to see this weakness and people who try and bully me and I'm going to end up fighting. And it wasn't the way. Everyone just went, wow, I never realised. And by doing that, I thought, we can do this. And we started this off in the August of 2019. It took us a while because I was the only common friend from there. Everyone had been there in the gym. Lee Cadman, Craig Pinch, Aaron Jew. And we got together and we were pre-recording it on my phone upstairs at the gym. You can still hear the fire alarm bleeping in the background. And we're complete strangers. And then through it, we've had like brilliant guests on from GB boxers, big super heavyweights to tough men. I went, do you get nervous? I went, oh, Kev. Oh, I feel sick. But I wanted the kids to hear that. Because you see these big tough boxers going, you get frights. I go, bloody hell, I do, yeah. To having people who've been abused as a child, to transgender, to dementia. And I think the problem is, when we're in the fog or the dark room of depression, which I call it, we often believe that we are the only person who feels like that. And that was one of the best lessons I could ever learn because, as I said to you the other day when we first met, when I was a child, I felt broken because of my eyes. Yeah. But then, older I got, I realised, and I'd look at people and you're broken because you're overweight, you're broken because you can't see, you're broken because you've got a stammer. Some people are broken because they're so good looking. And they're so good looking, but they only believe people want them for that. So even the most perfect people we look at, they're broken in some way. And I remember having a confidence seminar at the club. And we had from super heavyweights to every colour, every religion, all there was his brothers stood there. And Nick Davis, who's remarkable what he does, he says, say three things we're all frightened of. What's more? Getting killed, my mom getting killed, getting poorly. And went, embarrassment. And everyone looked at each other and went, what do you mean? He goes, who here would rather read out this document or go and ask that girl out or than to jump in that ring and potentially get hurt? And everyone put their hands up and went, so you would rather put yourself in physical danger than you would to feel uncomfortable? Everyone went, yeah. And that was such a lesson for me. I thought, if the worst thing that can happen to me is I get my feelings hurt or I feel a bit silly, I'm all right with that. Yeah. And I think the difference is when we're on the karaoke, we're putting ourselves out there to be laughed at. But when we're being vulnerable, like I'm doing now, then you're thinking, how bad if I get teased now? But if those people tease you, do you really want those people in your life?
Exactly.
And that was such a lesson for me.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, you know, what you've said is remarkable for everything that you've been through and how you've come through it. But just taking it back to your childhood when you got that news and then you were going through all those emotions, obviously it must have been hard to deal with and recognize. Like, what made you realize something wasn't quite right or that you needed some help?
What with the therapy side of it?
Yeah, just your emotions and then how you ended up going to therapy.
Well, I'm so blessed with the family I've got. My mum and dad, the best parents ever. My big brother Richie and had wonderful grandparents. And that you've got to realise certain things you can't do. If you throw a ball at me, it's going to hit me in the head, kind of thing. In boxing, it's a bit different because my foot's in range and I'm watching how your shoulders move. I'm very conscious about distance. But like, if you're going to get me to play tennis, which I tried and I was no good at it, looking to the ball. But I was so encouraged to try and to fail and to realise failing isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's just a way of teaching you. And then so I've always been empathetic and I love people and I love to, sometimes I'm too much because I take people's pain on.
Yeah.
And I'd done my coach for 2 years and I did an evening course doing counselling, level 2 or level 3, I can't remember, it's that long ago. And I was in this class and I was learning. And for me, counselling wasn't the thing that would have helped me. But by talking about it and being so open in a classroom with strangers, got me to terms with things I was actually feeling. So in a way it helped me, but in another way it didn't.
Yeah.
And at 21, Nick Davis had come up to the club and his dad was bringing down naughty children to work with. And he said, I'm an NLP practitioner. I said, what's that? And he started telling me about stuff and setting triggers of what can make me feel better. And that was a massive learning thing for me. Him doing it and doing the hypnosis. And there's videos on YouTube where he hypnotized me. I turned into a plank, he puts me on 2 seats and then sits on me. And it's like saying, we are so capable of doing things, but our mind is always telling us we can't. And it's about turning that I can't off.
Yeah.
And then by working with him, and then I tried seeing Alexander Walker, who's from our area, from Stairbridge, and he helped me. So I've never been frightened because of my life. I've always needed help, as in where the toilets. And what people will do, because I'm so high functioning, they'll go over there. Over there is a long way if you don't know which way you go.
Yeah.
So then you have to have the courage to say, excuse me, do you mind showing me? So I've always had that courage with asking for help. It takes you need courage to ask for it. Then you need courage to accept help. And that's the same with mental health, with anything. It takes 2 lots of courage to ask for it and then to accept it. There's no point in asking for it and then go, no, I don't listen to it. You have to ask for it, wait for the response, and then do your best to do it. It's like if I get someone in the boxing club, do you want to learn how to box? Yeah, but my dad tells me. Well, if you have your dad telling you, stay with your dad. If you want me to do my job, then you've got to listen. Yeah. And that's all it is. If you're going there to listen, you've got to be prepared to learn.
And what I like about it, obviously you've unpicked a lot, and what I like is your openness in discussing these issues, because it's not easy. It genuinely isn't. Like, people, when they take, like you said, take that first step to talk, you need courage. It's not easy to talk about these issues, and obviously you've been through a lot. But I want to touch on something more important than that. When we started talking about mental health, it was a very feminine approach. There were a lot more women that were more willing to be vulnerable, whereas with men, it wasn't. So when we came across your page, said Black Country Blokes, it sort of fascinated me even more, because you're looking at mental health from a male perspective, and usually you rarely get that, where it's let's focus on the men, because suicide rates are quite high. People aren't willing to be more vulnerable. So in terms of Black Country Blokes, what is your ultimate goal with Black Country Blokes?
I want to get us blokes talking, because I did my mental health first aid course last year, and the stats then, before the pandemic, I think it was 18 people a day were completing suicide. One of those was a minor, under 18, and 75% of those are men. So at the moment, we're losing more through suicide than we're losing through cancer, like prostate cancer. And I say, like, the biggest cancer for us blokes is prostate cancer. And we all know how we get tested for that. And that can be an embarrassing, yet life-saving check. And that's the same with opening up about mental health, because both take extreme intimacy. And a lot of the time you're thinking, I'll be all right. Same with the cancer. As soon as you can get cancer identified, better chance you've got of helping it. And that's the same with mental health, but we'll go, I'll be all right. And I know in my past experience and my mates, the only time we'd start talking about it is after 8 points or a couple of bags of drugs or a couple of spliffs and whatever, because then you go, I was off my nut. But really what you're trying to do is, I had to let my barriers down. So if you went, you silly git, what would you want to bet? You know, I wasn't myself. But all you're actually trying to do is talk. And what you women do so naturally, not knocking you, because I love my wife more than anything, I've seen her with her friends, they talk at each other. Oh, that felt great, really. Whereas men, you go, you're right, bruv, yeah. All right then.
I'm good.
How's the football? Oh, did you watch the boxing on the weekend? But really, what you're trying to do is, I'm having a bloody hard time. And what surprised me, and this is what we wanted, but it's always a surprise when you get one, how many women listeners we get. Because the women, the wives, the sisters, the mothers, the daughters, are trying to figure out how their man feels.
Yeah.
Because I love my wife more than God's green earth, you know what I mean? But sometimes you can't talk to your partner because you say I'm having a bad time, and the other partner gives some defense. Is it me? You go, I'm just not in a good place. And this is why we started up this support group at the Lions on a Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m, where we can have a chat. And when we get into the real world, we can have half an hour talking, get down, I'll teach you how to box, hit the bags, and then we'll have a talk. Because how many times you'll go like, Kev, how are you? Oh, my wife, she's doing me head in. You hit the bags, get them endorphins flowing, and go, you know what? It's not Kate. I'm not in a good place.
Yeah.
So let's try and get them two things going, get the blokes to talk and get the blokes to, get fit.
No, that's brilliant. And like, when you started off your page and getting these men talking, did you find it was harder or easier than expected for them to open up? And did you struggle to get people to come on and say it? Like, what was the process?
But I'm lucky. I've got such a wide circle, and I'd go like, you've got a brilliant story. Come on. And I go, Kevin. One of our first ever guests was a guy, he was sexually abused when he was 8 years old, and then went into drugs and booze and everything. And then the year before he came to our show, he admitted it. And he said, part of my recovery now is to talk about it. And I said, how did you have the courage? And he goes, you don't realise, Kev, it wasn't the courage to talk about it. I needed to talk about it, otherwise I was going to kill myself. And I carried that burden for nigh on 35 years. And he goes, but now I'm at peace. And like, we had someone from the travelling community, 2-time ABA champion, 4 Nations gold medalist. And like the travelling community, they don't talk about this because a lot of them have primary school education and they're working from the age of 11 and they're men's men, and then they come on and talk about it. And then my travellers at the club were going, Kevin, can I have a word? Because, sometimes I go down the bottom of the garden and have a cry. And I went, it's natural. I went, it's like when you go for a boxing match or you're going for a dance tournament, you have your nerves. It's natural. If you haven't got nerves, you're a psychopath. You know what I mean? And nerves have always got me through life. My legs shake and I've got to do it. Otherwise, I've let myself down. But anxiety, oh God, I honestly feel like I'm going to stroke out. My face going up, I can't swallow, and it's that close to feeling like you're going to die. But how I was, I never admit that. You know what I mean? But more I talked about it, easier it's got for me and for other people.
Yeah.
Just saying, it don't make you a coward. Some of the most mentally strong people I know have got mental health problems.
Yeah.
But the problem we've got now, me being registered being blind, you can close your eyes and envision what blindness is. But mental illness is harder to figure that out. And you might just go, oh, man up. How many poor souls, the last thing they ever heard was man up, pull yourself together. And because of that response, they didn't have the courage then to ask. Because help's like knocking on the door, you banging on, going, help me, help me, help me. If no one answers, actually, you stop knocking.
Yeah.
And there's another thing I want to pick up from that. So like you said, the traveling community. So clearly, like, we know from South Asian community perspective as well, that in certain communities more entrenched that you don't speak about this. You're a man's man, have some booze, have this, have that. That's the way to deal with it. And lately, more people are coming on the news and talking about mental health. And more often than not, it's positive. So I want to link this back to boxing. Tyson Fury came out from the traveling community and he spoke about his mental health issues. How important is it for role models such of that level to come out and say, look, I've got issues, it's okay? Do you think that sort of stuff is important?
I think it is when it's for the right reasons. And what he's done, like Frank Bruno before him and others, I think it's brilliant addressing it, because when you've got Tyson Fury from the traveling community, he's showing his people he can be vulnerable. And I think not just from his community, but to any community. Because as I always say, like, mental health, I don't care what sexuality you are, what colour you are, what religion you are. It's like a cancer. You have these people who've never touched a cigarette or drank in their life and dropped dead of cancer. It's the same with mental health. But I think we've got to start treating the mental health and the physical health as the same, and realising they're both debilitating. But to answer your question, I think we need the people at the top, your role models, but you need your senseis, your coaches, your football instructors, everyone on the same board.
Yeah.
And my dream is to get this as part of the curriculum for A, amateur boxing, and B, just overall sports in schools, where, like, because in the boxing world, every coach has to have a first aid. But if my nose is dripping of blood, high chance I've got a broken nose, or if my knuckles off at my hand, I've got to go to A&E. But you could walk past 10 coaches, and on the last one, someone go, Kev, come here. You don't look right, bro. Because the most scary question we'll probably ever ask is, are you suicidal? Because everybody, if Kev says yes.
Yeah.
But by asking it, you want to save that person's life. Because then he's got to reflect. And then it's, what do I do next?
Yeah.
If it's like a first aider, if you get run over, I haven't got to sew your leg back on. I've got to do my best to keep you alive and conscious until the ambulance gets there. That's the same for mental health first aider. So if we can do our best, not to save the person, but to keep them around for longer until they can be seen by a professional, or just showing them that someone does give a damn, wouldn't that be a better world?
Yeah, and when we spoke as well before, we mentioned about getting help, obviously from professionals, but from people that have the lived experience. How important do you think that is? That yes, you can go to the doctors, and obviously that is brilliant as well. But speaking to someone that's been through mental health, how important do you think that is, like, to be relatable to someone else that's going through it?
If you go and learn carpentry, you want to know your teacher knows how to saw wood. You know? And it's the same. I've met some very, very clever people, very, very clever people, and they use very, very clever words. But unless you're a very, very clever man who understands very, very clever words, you might as well be speaking gobbledygook.
Yeah.
So you've got to speak to people how they can understand it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just trying to show off how clever you are. So you've got to speak to people how they understand it and show, and make them realise, I don't know exactly what you are going. However, I've been through similar situations. Because you don't want to take away from their pain, but you want to show, I understand how it is to live with a disability. I understand how it feels to be anxious. I understand how it feels to be depressed, we can't go to settee. I understand when PTSD when you're having, and that makes you more relatable.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, if you've had a rough time at school or you're not academically intelligent, the thought of seeing someone in a suit, speaking the Queen's English, using more syllables in a word than I could use in a sentence, is very intimidating.
Yeah.
You want to go there and go, can you explain what I feel? And I wish I had the answers. I wish I had but you see so much of it now. Listen to the Black Country Blokes and we've got the 5 ways of beating anxiety. What a load of cobblers. All we can say is what we've been through. We're not experts, but we are experienced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's all we can do, is give our honest opinion on something.
Yeah.
We're not trying to sell you the cure. We're just showing you our journey of getting through it together.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nice way to summarize it, because I think with what you guys are doing, it's about talking and listening and trying to put people into the right places. Like you said, we're not experts, but we've got experiences. We can share those. We're here to listen, and we can point you in the right direction if it's possible. And I think that's a very important point. And on this note, I do want to end it, and I do want to say to everyone, please make sure you check out the Black Country Blokes page. Sorry, the links will be in the description below. Check out the podcast, and do everyone a favor, please, if you can. If you listen to the podcast and you like it, please leave a review. Those reviews are very important because it puts people in the right direction to say, right, this is what this podcast is about. It's helped me. Let's see if it can help someone else. I do want to thank you for your time, Kev. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
No, just as I always say, take care of yourselves and each other.
And thank you for your time, Kev. Bye, everyone.
Bye.